Naya had been walking since sunrise, and her feet felt as if they were made of stone. She kept one hand tightly around the edge of her thin blanket, pulling it closer around her shoulders to block the cold wind that rolled across the open land. She had hoped that the small frontier town ahead would offer her at least one chance, one place that needed help. One family willing to hire her for even the simplest work. But by the time the sun began to dip low, she had found nothing. People had stared at her for long moments, and then turned their faces away. Some whispered, others narrowed their eyes. A few simply shut their doors before she could finish her sentence. She was used to hard stares, but today they cut deeper because she had nowhere left to go. Her stomach was empty, her legs were weak, and the cold evening air pressed against her like a heavy hand. She tried not to show worry on her face because she had survived far worse. But even the strongest heart could feel small when the world refused to offer a little kindness. When she reached the end of the dusty street, she paused near a small water trough and lowered her bundle to the ground. She dipped her hands in the cold water and washed her face, trying to wake herself up. Her reflection in the water looked tired, her dark eyes dull with exhaustion, her braided hair messy from the wind, her cheeks hollow from days of little food. She didn't know what she would do next. All she knew was that she couldn't sleep outside again tonight. The nights were getting colder. Last night she barely slept. The wind had cut through her blanket and made her shiver until morning. She whispered to herself, almost as if speaking to someone far away. Just one place. Just one chance. But no one was left to give it in the town. So she picked up her bundle again and walked toward the open land on the east side of town. The sky was turning orange and purple, and she knew she had maybe an hour before full darkness. She kept walking, following a dirt road that led between wide fields and empty barns. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but she hoped to find a ranch or a farmhouse. Sometimes ranchers needed extra hands. Maybe someone living away from town would listen before turning her away. As she walked, she heard the sound of distant cattle and saw smoke rising from a chimney far ahead. That gave her a small spark of hope. She adjusted her blanket and kept moving until the outline of a small homestead came into view. A barn, a paddock, a few horses grazing, and a house with a porch light glowing faintly. She walked slowly, not wanting to frighten anyone. When she reached the fence, she stopped for a moment to catch her breath. Her legs trembled from hunger and cold, but she willed herself to stay steady. Inside the house, Dawson Reed had just set down a bowl of stew on his table when he heard a faint knock on the door. He paused, surprised. He rarely had visitors, especially after dark. He lived alone on the ranch he had inherited from his parents, and most folks from town only came by when they needed help mending a fence or borrowing a tool. Visitors at night usually meant trouble or emergencies. He wiped his hands on a cloth and walked to the door. When he opened it, the cold air rushed in, and along with it came the sight of a woman standing on his porch. She looked tired, almost ready to fall. For a second, he didn't say anything. He was surprised not because she was Apache, but because she looked like she hadn't eaten in days. She lifted her eyes, and he noticed how scared yet determined they were. She didn't look like someone who wanted charity. She looked like someone fighting hard, not to collapse. Her voice was soft but clear. "I need shelter. No one wants to give me work." Those words hung in the air between them. Dawson had heard many people complain about life being hard, but he had never heard someone say something so plain and honest at his doorstep. He took a breath and tried to make sense of the moment. The world outside was cold and unfriendly tonight. He couldn't imagine turning anyone away in this state. He stepped aside. "Come in. It's warm inside." Naya hesitated for a heartbeat. She had been refused too many times today to fully trust kindness. But she also had no strength left to walk farther. So she nodded once and stepped inside. The warmth of the small house wrapped around her like a blanket. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed slower, letting her body relax just a little. Dawson watched her carefully, not with suspicion, but with quiet concern. He could see she was exhausted. He walked to the table, pulled out the extra bowl he kept for guests, and filled it with stew. When he set it in front of her, she looked at him with surprise, as if she hadn't expected so much generosity. "You should eat," he said simply. "You look like you haven't had a real meal in a while." She sat down slowly and took the spoon in her hand. The first bite made her eyes close again. It was warm, rich, and comforting. She ate with careful manners, not rushing though hunger pushed her. Dawson noticed how she tried to keep her posture straight, even though she was clearly tired. After a few minutes, he sat across from her. He didn't ask questions right away. He didn't want to overwhelm her. He had never been good with long conversations anyway. He preferred silence, where he could observe and understand quietly. But Naya knew he deserved an explanation. She lifted her eyes and said, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm only looking for work. I can cook, clean, take care of horses, anything, just for shelter and food." Her voice carried a mixture of strength and humility. She was not begging, she was offering her hands. Dawson nodded slowly. "I can see you're a hard worker. And you came here. Honestly. That matters." She looked down at her bowl again, unsure if that meant yes or no. He added, "You can stay tonight. Tomorrow, we'll see what work you can help with." Relief washed over her face, not dramatic, not loud, but gentle. Her shoulders loosened, and her eyes softened. For the first time in days, she felt safe enough to breathe fully. He pointed to a small space near the fireplace. "You can sleep there. It'll be warm." She nodded and finished her meal. When she stood, she almost stumbled from tiredness, but she caught herself quickly. Dawson instinctively reached out, but she straightened before needing his help. "I'm all right," she said quietly. He respected that. She wasn't used to anyone helping her, and he wasn't used to anyone needing him. They were both learning something new. She laid her blanket near the fire and rested her head on her small bundle. The warmth soothed her instantly. Her eyes closed, and her breathing slowed as sleep took over. Dawson watched from across the room, making sure she was comfortable. He didn't know her story fully yet, but he knew enough life had not been kind to her. After a while, he went outside to check the animals. As he walked back in, he glanced toward the sleeping woman and felt a quiet tug in his chest. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew she deserved at least one peaceful night. When dawn approached, Naya woke to the crackle of the fire and the smell of coffee. She sat up slowly, stretching her stiff muscles. Dawson was already awake, working at the table with tools spread out before him. He looked up and nodded. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied softly. "I have some tasks today," he continued. "Small things to start with. If you can help, you can stay." Naya stood straight, ready to work. "I will do my best." He led her outside, where the early morning air was crisp. The sky was pale pink, and the ground sparkled faintly with frost. Dawson showed her a bucket of tools that needed cleaning, some tack that needed oiling, and the barn floor that needed sweeping. She didn't hesitate. She took the tools and began cleaning them with careful hands. She worked without stopping, without complaining, without showing any sign of weakness. Her focus impressed him. He watched her for a moment from a distance and realized she was not asking for kindness, she was earning her place with dignity. By midday, she had finished the tasks he gave her. She stood beside the barn, waiting for his next instruction. He approached, looking surprised at how quickly and neatly she had finished everything. "You worked hard," he said simply. Naya nodded. "Thank you for letting me try." He motioned toward the house. "Come eat. You earned it." She followed him. And for the first time since losing her family, she felt a small light returning inside her. A small sense that maybe, just maybe, She had found a place where she could start again. The morning air was cold but gentle as Naya stepped out of the house with a small cup of warm coffee in her hands. She held it carefully, feeling the heat spread through her fingers and calm her nerves. She had slept peacefully for the first time in many weeks, but she knew a roof over her head meant nothing if she could not prove her worth. She looked around the ranch with quiet focus, the barn, the corral, the wide fields stretching toward distant hills. Everything on this land looked worn but cared for. Everything held a story. Dawson was already outside, checking the fence line near the paddock. He moved with slow, steady steps, the kind that came from years of working alone. His hat was pulled low, and his coat was old but thick. When he noticed Naya watching him, he gave a small nod, a simple gesture, but one that showed she was welcome to follow. She set the cup aside and walked toward him. "Is there something more I can do?" He pointed toward a stack of tools resting against the barn wall. "Some need sharpening. Some need oil. They're old, but if they're cared for, they'll last." Naya nodded right away. She liked tasks that kept her hands busy. It helped quiet the thoughts that sometimes troubled her, memories of losing her family, memories of cold nights with no fire, memories of people turning away because they didn't trust her face or her language. She didn't want to carry those thoughts now. She wanted to work. She began sharpening the tools with slow, careful movements. Dawson worked nearby, fixing a broken section of fence. From time to time, he glanced toward her, watching how she handled each tool with precision. She reminded him of someone who had learned usefulness, not by choice, but by necessity. Her posture, her silence, her focus, all of it spoke of someone who had lived a hard life, but refused to be defeated by it. By noon, Naya had finished more tools than Dawson expected. He walked toward her, dusting his gloves. "You're fast," he said. She didn't smile, but her eyes showed a hint of pride. "I learned to work when I was young. Everyone had to help." Dawson nodded, seeing truth in her words. "You do good work." His simple compliment warmed her more than she expected. She looked down at her hands, rough from days of travel, and for a moment she felt like she could belong here. Maybe not fully, maybe not forever, but at least in the way honest work allowed someone to belong anywhere. Dawson motioned toward the house. "Come inside. There's stew left from yesterday." Klug 4. After C. As they ate, a quiet settled between them. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that allowed them both to breathe. Naya ate slowly, savoring each bite. She had learned long ago never to rush through a warm meal. She watched Dawson from the corner of her eye. He seemed like a man who spoke little because he preferred to show things with actions. She respected that. After lunch, Dawson cleared the dishes. Naya moved to wash them, but he stopped her with a gentle shake of his head. "You've worked enough this morning. Rest a little." She didn't argue. She walked outside to sit on the porch steps. The sun was higher now, warming the land. A soft breeze carried the smell of dust, hay, and distant pine. She watched a pair of horses grazing lazily in the field. Their peaceful movements soothed her. She had always loved animals. They never judged, never whispered, never feared. She didn't notice Dawson approaching until he spoke. "You handle yourself well around tools," he said quietly. She nodded. "And animals, too. If you want, I can help with the horses." He hesitated. His horses were valuable, one of the few things keeping the ranch running. But something in her steady gaze reassured him. So, he nodded. She approached the closest horse, a calm chestnut mare with a gentle face. Naya held out her hand, letting the horse sniff her fingers. Then, she stroked its neck with smooth, confident motions. The horse relaxed, lowering its head. Dawson watched this with a mixture of surprise and respect. "You weren't just saying it," he murmured. "I don't say things that aren't true." she replied softly. For the next hour, she brushed the mare, cleaned its hooves, and checked its coat. Dawson worked beside her, repairing a saddle strap. Sometimes they spoke a few words, but most of the time they worked in quiet harmony. Just as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the fields, Dawson saddled up one of the horses to ride into town for supplies. Naya stayed behind to finish cleaning the barn. When he returned, he looked troubled. Naya noticed immediately. He didn't mention what happened, but she felt tension in the way he removed his gloves, the way he set down the bags. She didn't ask questions yet. She waited until he sat on the porch and took a long breath. Finally, she asked, "Did something happen?" He hesitated, wondering how much truth to share, but she had been honest with him from the start. She deserved honesty in return. "Some folks in town asked if I'd hired you," he said. "They don't like strangers staying out here, especially not someone different." She lowered her eyes. She knew exactly what he meant. She had been treated that way her whole life. Still, hearing it again made her chest tighten. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she whispered. "You didn't," he replied firmly. "People don't know you. That's their fault." His words steadied her. They sat together in silence as the sky darkened and the stars appeared. The night air grew cooler, and Naya pulled her blanket around her shoulders again. After a long pause, Dawson spoke softly. "You're safe here. Don't worry about what others say." Those words settled into her heart like warm embers. She wished she could believe them fully, but fear still lingered. Still, it touched her deeply that he said it at all. The next morning came quietly. Naya rose early, before Dawson, to begin chores. She swept the barn, fed the horses, and prepared a simple breakfast using the few ingredients she found. When Dawson stepped outside, he seemed surprised to see everything already done. "You don't have to do all this alone," he said. She answered honestly, "You gave me warmth and food. Work is the least I can offer." As the days passed, a rhythm formed. Each morning, she helped with chores. Each afternoon, she learned new tasks: mending ropes, sorting supplies, checking the cattle. Dawson taught her patiently, correcting gently when needed. She listened carefully and learned quickly. The ranch began to feel lighter with her help, as if two steady hands had finally joined a pair that had been working alone for too long. Little by little, she found small comforts in daily life: warm meals, steady work, and quiet evenings near the fire. But she also noticed the way Dawson looked out for her, not as a burden but as someone worth protecting. That attention was new to her. People usually kept their distance, but Dawson seemed to think she deserved space in his world. She wasn't sure what to make of that kindness. It felt like something she wasn't used to holding. On the fourth evening, Dawson returned from tending the cattle with a slight limp. Naya noticed instantly and hurried to meet him. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing," he replied, brushing it off. But she insisted he sit. She checked his boot and found a small cactus spine stuck deep in the leather and slightly into his skin. With gentle care, she removed it and cleaned the area with warm water. "You should rest," she said. His eyes softened. "You care a lot more than you say." She didn't answer. She simply stood and returned to her tasks, though her cheeks warmed slightly. Later that night, as the fire crackled softly, Naya sat near the flames and watched Dawson repair a lantern. She realized that the ranch felt different now, less empty, less lonely. She wasn't sure if the change was only inside her or if Dawson felt it too. But she sensed something unspoken forming between them. Not something loud or dramatic, something gentle, steady, and real. When the fire burned low, Dawson looked up and said in a quiet voice, "You're doing good here." The words were simple, but they filled her heart with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you," she whispered. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in many months, she felt like she belonged not because she was needed, but because she was valued. The days on the ranch passed calmly, and Naya began to settle into a steady rhythm. Every morning she woke before the sun, lit the small fire, and stepped out into the cool air to start the chores. Dawson would join her soon after, and together they worked side by side without needing many words. They understood each other's silence. It was peaceful, almost comforting, like two weary spirits finding rest in the same place. But peace doesn't last long on frontier land. Trouble always found its way to open spaces. It was late afternoon when Naya first sensed something wrong. The sky was clear. The animals were quiet. And Dawson was repairing the wagon near the barn. Naya was sweeping the barn floor when she heard the distant sound of hooves, heavy, fast, and coming straight toward the ranch. She stepped outside and shaded her eyes from the sunlight. Two men on horseback approached. She recognized neither of them, but something about their posture, the way they leaned forward, the way their hands hung too close to their belts, made her uneasy. She stood still, waiting. She knew enough of life to understand that running, or hiding, would only make things worse. Dawson stood up the moment he heard the horses. His expression changed, calm, steady, but alert. He wiped his hands and walked beside Naya, positioning himself just slightly ahead of her without making it obvious. She noticed and felt a strange warmth in her chest. Someone was standing with her, not against her. The two men stopped their horses near the corral. They looked down at Dawson with confident smirks, then shifted their eyes toward Naya. Their expressions sharpened. One of them spoke first, a tall man with a rough beard. "We've been looking for someone, Apache woman. Heard she's been wandering around town." Naya stayed silent. Her heart beat slowly but firmly. Dawson kept his voice steady. "What do you want with her?" The second man, younger but with cold eyes, leaned forward in his saddle. "She stole a horse from our ranch. Weeks ago. We've got every right to take her back with us." Naya's breath caught for a moment. Then she shook her head, quietly but firmly. "I didn't steal anything." "Jonero." The first man narrowed his eyes at her. "Course you'd say that." Dawson stepped in front of her fully now, blocking the men from her view. His tone hardened, but not with anger, with certainty. "Do you have proof?" The men exchanged a glance. The younger one shrugged. "Don't need proof. We know what we saw." Dawson shook his head. "You didn't see her. You're guessing. And guessing isn't enough to take someone away." The older man dismounted slowly, letting his boots hit the ground with heavy thuds. He walked closer, eyes fixed on Naya. She didn't step back, though her hands tightened slightly around the handle of the broom she held. He spoke in a slow, sharp tone. "I don't care if she's sweepin' barns or cookin' meals for you. She's comin' with us." Dawson moved like a solid wall between them. His voice dropped even lower. "She isn't going anywhere." The air thickened. A long moment passed. The older man studied Dawson's face, then glanced around the ranch, small but well kept, quiet but clearly defended by someone who took pride in it. "You're making a mistake," the younger man called out. "That woman will bring trouble," Dawson answered without turning his head. "The only trouble here is you two." The older man stepped back toward his horse, but his voice carried a warning. "This ain't finished. We'll be back, and we'll bring more men." He mounted his horse, the leather saddle creaking under his weight. The younger man glared at Naya one last time before riding off. Their horses kicked up dust that floated slowly in the sunset light. When they were finally gone, a heavy silence filled the ranch. Naya lowered her eyes. "They'll come back." Dawson nodded. "I know. I don't want danger to come to your home," she whispered. He looked at her carefully, studying the worry on her face. "This is my home. My land. I decide who's welcome. You've done nothing wrong. She opened her mouth to argue, but he shook his head gently. You don't run from false accusations. His words made her chest tighten. She had spent her whole life being blamed for things she never did. She was used to running, used to being alone, but Dawson was telling her to stay, to fight, not with violence, but with truth and dignity. As night approached, Naya helped Dawson finish the chores, though her hands were a little shaky. She kept glancing toward the road, half expecting the riders to return. Dawson noticed, and when the sky turned completely dark, he walked beside her to the house. You don't have to worry tonight, he said quietly. I'll keep watch. You should rest, she replied. I will, after I'm sure the ranch is safe. His calm voice steadied her heart. She went inside, lit the lamp, and prepared a simple meal. When Dawson finally came in, she saw the tiredness in his eyes. He had been alert all evening, watching every shadow, listening to every sound. But when he sat down to eat, he didn't complain. After dinner, Naya washed the dishes while Dawson leaned back in his chair. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with a warm glow. You don't believe their accusation, do you? She asked finally, her voice gentle but unsure. He looked up, surprised she even needed to ask. No, he said simply. I know honesty when I see it. Her breathing softened with relief. Thank you. Dawson hesitated, then spoke again. Naya paused. She rarely spoke of her past. Even thinking about it felt like reopening an old wound. But Dawson had stood up for her without hesitation. He deserved to know something. Dawson. A sickness came, she said quietly. Many died. My mother, my brother. The rest of the band broke apart. Some went north, some west. I had no one left. Dawson listened without interrupting. I tried to live near other families, she continued. But people feared me. They didn't understand me. I kept moving, hoping to find a place where someone would give me work. She lowered her hands into her lap. No one did. No one did. Dawson's voice softened. You deserved better. His simple words made her chest ache. She blinked quickly to stop tears from forming. She didn't want him to see her cry. You found this ranch, he added. Maybe that means something. She looked up slowly. He was watching her with a calm, steady expression, not pity, not curiosity, but understanding. Later that night, when Naya lay near the fireplace with her blanket tucked around her, she could still feel the weight of Dawson's words settling inside her. Something warm, something good, something she had not felt in a long time. But that warmth didn't erase the fear that trouble would return. And trouble did return sooner than she expected. Just before dawn, the sound of hooves thundered down the road again. Naya woke instantly and sat up, heart pounding. Dawson pushed open the door, fully awake, already putting on his coat and boots. She followed him outside. In the dim gray light, she saw 3 horses approaching, not 2, not the same pair, but 3 larger riders. Her stomach tightened. Dawson whispered, "Stay behind me." She nodded, though her legs trembled. The riders stopped near the gate. One of them spoke, his voice sharp. "We heard you're hiding someone who doesn't belong." Dawson stood tall, unshaken. "She belongs where she's treated fair." Naya felt something inside her shift, something like courage. She stepped forward, just enough that she could speak clearly, but still let Dawson stand protectively ahead of her. "I didn't steal anything," she said firmly. The men ignored her words. One leaned forward. "We're taking her. Move aside." Dawson's voice stayed steady. "No." The man glared at him. "You're protecting her? Why?" Dawson answered quietly. "Because she deserves to be protected." Those words seemed to echo through the cold morning air. Naya felt her throat tighten. No one had ever spoken for her like that, not with such certainty. The riders stared at Dawson for a long moment. They realized this ranch wouldn't be an easy place to intimidate. Finally, they turned their horses around and left, muttering threats, as they disappeared over the hill. When they were gone, Naya turned to Dawson with tears in her eyes, not of fear, but of gratitude. "You shouldn't risk yourself for me," she whispered. He shook his head. "Some things are worth standing up for." She looked down, then up at him again. "Thank you." Dawson gave a small nod, but the look in his eyes said more than words ever could. For the second time, he had stood between her and danger. For the second time, she felt something inside her change. Something that made her believe she had finally found a place where she was not alone. Trouble had come, but she had not run. Because now, she had someone who stood with her. The sky was turning soft gold the morning after the riders left. A gentle warmth spread over the fields, touching the barn roof, the fences, and the quiet land that surrounded Dawson's ranch. But inside Naya's chest, there was still a tightness. She had slept lightly, waking again and again, afraid she might hear hooves or angry voices returning. Yet every time she opened her eyes, the ranch remained calm, the fire still glowing, and Dawson sitting nearby, keeping watch. When she woke at dawn, she saw he had fallen asleep in the chair with his coat still on, his head leaning slightly to one side. She felt a deep ache of gratitude. No one had ever stayed awake to protect her. No one had ever chosen to stand between her and danger twice. She watched him for a moment before quietly rising from her blanket. She stepped outside to breathe the fresh morning air. The world felt bigger and quieter than yesterday. The threat of the riders still lingered in her mind. But so did something else. Something warmer. She wrapped her blanket tighter and looked out at the fields glowing under the sunrise. This land held peace she didn't want to lose. Inside, Dawson stirred and came to the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You're up early," he said, his voice low and rough from a long night. "I wanted to see the morning," she replied softly. "It makes me feel like things can start again." He stepped onto the porch beside her. They stood in silence, watching the colors spread across the hills. It was a still moment, one that felt almost sacred. Naya's heart steadied. She wasn't alone anymore, not in the way she had been for so long. After a while, Dawson spoke. "I'm heading to town today." Naya's eyes widened with worry. "Those men, they might be there." "They might," he admitted. "But I need to speak with the sheriff. Needs to be done. Their stories don't add up." She wanted to stop him. She wanted to ask him not to risk himself again. But she also knew this land was his home, and he wanted to protect it and protect her too. So she nodded slowly. "Be careful," she whispered. He gave a soft smile. "Always." Naya spent the day working around the ranch, but her thoughts kept drifting toward the distant road Dawson had taken. She swept the barn, fed the horses, carried buckets of water, and checked every tool twice just to keep her hands busy. But her mind refused to rest. Every sound of hoofbeats made her pause. Every gust of wind made her look toward the road. By afternoon, she couldn't help standing near the fence, staring toward town. The sky had turned pale blue, and small birds hopped along the fence rails. The calm around her didn't quiet her worry. When she finally heard the slow rhythm of horse hooves approaching, her breath caught. She stepped forward, clutching the fence rail. A moment later, Dawson's familiar shape came into view on his horse. Relief washed through her like warm water. He dismounted, dusted himself off, and walked toward her with the calmness of someone who had done what needed to be done. "What happened?" she asked, unable to hide her worry. "I spoke with the sheriff," Dawson said. He checked their report. That stolen horse they claimed? It was never linked to any Apache woman. They made it up. Naya lowered her head in quiet understanding. She had known it, but hearing it from the law meant something. Dawson continued. Sheriff said he'd talk to them. He won't let them ride around causing trouble for no reason. Naya let out a slow breath. Something heavy loosened inside her chest. She felt safer, not completely, but enough to breathe easier. Dawson watched her carefully. You don't have to leave, he said softly. Not now. Not ever, because of lies. Her eyes lifted to his. The sincerity she saw there almost broke her. She had never been offered a place without conditions. She had never heard someone speak with such steady faith in her. I don't want to bring danger to your home, she said. This is our home now. Dawson replied quietly. You've earned your place here. The word our echoed in her mind. She wasn't sure if he meant it in the way she felt it, but it warmed her deeply either way. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Naya and Dawson ate dinner together. She cooked, and he told her what he saw in town, how some people had looked at him strangely after hearing he defended an Apache woman, how others simply nodded, uninterested in the matter. But none of it bothered him. Dawson had always been a quiet man, living by his own sense of right and wrong, not by the opinions of others. After dinner, they sat outside on the porch. The night breeze was cool, and the stars were sharp against the dark sky. Naya looked up at them, remembering nights long ago when she watched them with her family. Those memories used to hurt, but sitting beside Dawson, they felt gentler, like something she could carry without breaking. You don't talk much about your family, Dawson said quietly. She leaned back slightly. Sometimes it hurts too much to speak of them. But lately, it hurts less. Less. He nodded slowly. You're strong. She gave a tired smile. I don't feel strong. I just kept walking, because there was nothing else to do. Strength isn't always loud, Dawson said. Sometimes it's just choosing to keep going. His words settled softly inside her. She glanced at him, noticing the honesty on his face, the patience in his eyes. She felt a warmth grow in her chest, something she wasn't sure she should feel, something she hadn't felt since before she lost her family. She turned her gaze back to the stars, unsure how to say what filled her heart. But Dawson seemed to understand, even without words. Over the next few weeks, life on the ranch slowly changed in small, gentle ways. Naya's presence became part of the land's rhythm. She tended the horses with care, fixed broken tools, helped repair fences, and cooked warm meals that filled the house with comforting smells. Dawson worked beside her, showing her how to mend leather straps, how to check cattle for illness, how to read the sky for signs of weather. The quiet partnership between them grew stronger with each passing day. Sometimes she caught him watching her not with suspicion, but with a soft expression she couldn't name. And sometimes she found herself watching him too, his steady hands, his simple honesty, the way he treated the land with respect. One evening, as they finished feeding the horses, Dawson stopped beside her. You've made this ranch better, he said softly. I don't know how I managed everything alone before. Naya looked up at him, her eyes warm. You gave me a chance when no one else would. He shook his head gently. You earned your place. I just opened the door. Her heart fluttered. She looked away, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The barn filled with the sound of horses chewing hay, and the soft glow of sunset made everything feel quiet and warm. A few nights later, as the fire burned low in the house, Naya sat on the floor near the hearth, mending a torn shirt. Dawson sat at the table, polishing a lantern. A comfortable silence filled the room. After a while, Dawson spoke, his voice low. Naya, do you want to stay here? Not just for work, not just for shelter, but as your home? She froze, needle and cloth in her hands. Her heart beat so loudly she wondered if he could hear it. She lifted her eyes, slowly. You mean, stay with you? She whispered. He nodded once, steady and calm. Only if you want to. Only if this place feels right to you. Two, 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 two. Her breath trembled. She looked around the warm firelight, the wooden walls, the tools neatly arranged, the scent of earth and pine drifting through the open window. She thought of the quiet mornings, the shared work, the way Dawson protected her without hesitation. She had been wandering for so long, searching for a place where she wasn't feared or judged, a place where someone saw her as a person, not as a threat, a place where she could breathe without looking over her shoulder. She looked into Dawson's eyes. They were gentle and honest. "I want to stay," she said softly. "This is the first place that feels like home." Dawson exhaled slowly, as if he had been carrying a weight too heavy to admit. A small smile touched his lips. Not large, not loud, but real. "Then stay," he said. "As long as you want." Naya felt her heart settle into a calm she had never known. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't begging for work or shelter. She had found something new, something steady, warm, and true. She had found a home. And in that quiet, fire-lit room, she realized something even deeper. She had found someone to stand beside. Not because she needed saving, but because she deserved belonging.